Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, coming to you from CATS, Catholics at the Shore, at the Jersey Shore this year. And it's an amazing opportunity for leaders and ministers in the faith to be able to engage in renewing their faith so that they can keep transforming the culture. Joining me is Santonio Hill. Santonio runs Catholic Bomb Company, which I'll invite him to share with you about. But he's also a speaker, a thinker, worked for Focus. Currently working for Focus. And just a man who's deeply passionate about bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ to those in need. Santonio, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Good to be here. It's on a beautiful sunny day, so we can enjoy that, bask in that.
and it's a blessing. It really is. The weather here has been beautiful so far. I want to give you some time to just share your story, who you are, let our listeners get to know you a little bit.
Man, well, how much time do I have?
You have 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. I'll make it quick. So a little bit about me growing up. I'm originally from Maryland, Southern Maryland. And in Maryland, growing up as a Black Catholic, it's not a rare thing. In Maryland and in Louisiana and also in Detroit, it's not a rare thing to grow up being Black and Catholic. Anywhere else, for the most part, in the nation, it's truly a rarity. Mm-hmm. And so...
And outside of the world.
And outside of the world, I mean, South Africa.
Outside of the U.S., sorry, not the world, yeah. Outside of the U.S., but yes.
If I go to Africa, I just blend in. I'm no longer unique, and there's that. But I... grew up cradle Catholic, and I got my sacraments of initiation, CCD, all of that, and public school kid, and the faith never really took root for me. I guess that all the seeds were being planted during homilies and going to mass and receiving the Eucharist and things like that, and going to confession and those things, and a little bit of youth group as well. But to be honest with you, my youth group experience was I went for the pizza, and I also went to work on my pickup lines on all the homeschool girls.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, well, if this works on her, then it might work on Felicia when I get back to school. And so, I'm just being honest. But I would say when the faith really started taking off for me, because I also grew up without my father in my life. Mm-hmm. So I raised by my mom, raised by my grandma and my sister. And I would say when the faith really started taking off for me was when Father Scott Woods, my parish priest, decided to really just deeply invest in me. He would invite me on camping trips with the youth group. He would invite me to go to Mount 2000. I don't know if that's still happening these days or not, but that's a big conference that takes place for high school kids and at Mount St. Mary's College University. He invited me to just pray. And the one invitation that really changed my life was the invitation to go to seminary. And that was very, very wild, because prior to that invitation, I had not a clue what seminary was. Growing up, football was my God, and that's all I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to pursue. I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. I'm made to be a football player, offensive lineman, and just run through people. And one Sunday after Mass, he says, "Hey, Santonio, what are you doing after you graduate high school this year?" And I said, "Well, Father, I'm glad you asked. I haven't really shared this with many people yet, but I have a scholarship to go play football at Towson University. And that's, something that I've been looking forward to my entire life. I wrote it down on a wall that I'm going to be in the NFL one day. And this is one of the steps that I've been blessed with to take to get to that point." And he said, "Well, that's awesome, buddy. Congratulations." And I said, "Thank you. I appreciate that." And I'm trying to leave. And he says, "Just one question. Have you ever considered the seminary?" And I said, "What is the seminary?" And he says, "Well, it's a place where men go and study to be priests." And I said, "Oh, Father Scott, buddy, no, this is not something that I'm looking forward to, something that I want to do. Like, I just told you what my plans were." And he said, "Well, how about you pray about it?" And I said, "Well, how about I sleep on it?" And so that night, I had this dream where I'm in this long line of Little League football. And all of these kids, they're geared up. They have the shoulder pads on and helmets, footballs in hand. They're ready to go and play a game. And I'm in line as big as I am without any equipment, no gear, nothing. And this line went through like mountains, hills, and valleys, and it led up to this massive castle. And when I finally made my way inside the castle, there was this table. And seated at the middle of this table was this bishop. And on the other side were these two priests. And they motioned me to step forward. They slapped me a sheet of paper and hand me a pen. And I'm thinking, oh, they want my autograph. They know I'm about to blow up and be this big time football player, and they're getting ahead of the curve. That's smart. That wasn't the case. I sign it, I slide it back over. They take out a huge stamp and they stamp it and they say, congratulations, now you're a priest. And I'm thinking, oh no, I got to take this, rip it up. I didn't read the fine print. This is horrible. Wake me up from this terrible dream. And they give me a bunch of books and sweaters and breath mints and whatever. I guess that's what priests needed in my, psyche. And they say, your locker's down to the left. Have a nice day. And so I take my things with me, and I'm making my way to my locker. And I knew the combination somehow, open it up, put the things inside, pop out a breath mint, put it in, because I guess you never know. And I slammed the locker shut, wake up, and I said, no way I'm going to ever be a priest. The day I become a priest is the day I become terrible at basketball. I know I got a scholarship in football, but basketball was another sport that I was good at as well. And the next night, I have another dream. I'm playing basketball. It's like stadium, arena style, lights, camera, action. There's like these posters of my face everywhere, and I'm clearly the star player. And at tip-off, I remember my teammate passed me the ball, and I'm taking shots, and I miss every single shot the entire dream. Every shot I put up, just brick, banging it off the walls and terrible. And I wake up from that dream, and I'm thinking, oh no, my life is over. I'm going to be a priest. And so I'm wrestling with this for the next month and a half, 2 months. And I'm trying to figure out what is going on, like what's happening with my life. And I had no spiritual tools. I had no clue how to discern, had no clue how to pray. And so I just felt like, I'm spinning my wheels in mud. And then I said, well, let me talk to the person who got me in this to begin with, Father Scott Woods. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to Father Scott and I said, hey, can we talk way over here after Mass, just like where nobody's around and can hear what we got to say? And he said, sure thing, buddy. Is it confession? I said, no. What is even that? I'm still not a practicing Catholic, really, at that deeper level. And I started asking him about his life. I said, so do you always have to wear this black dress? Like, is this like, what's up with that?
Black dress.
The cassock.
Yeah, no, I got it.
And I said, do you only work once a week? If so, like, maybe this is a pretty good gig. And I'm just asking him all these questions, and he's sharing with me his vocation in a way that I could understand, a man that is poorly catechized, but could take it in small bite-sized portions. And as he's explaining his life to me, I'm thinking, all right, well, this is pretty cool. But then the thing that hit me over top of the head was he started talking about the Eucharist. And he said, Santonio, you got to understand that when I say Mass and I'm consecrating and I'm at the moment of transubstantiation, this isn't just a symbol. This isn't just like, what people say, like, oh, this is Jesus, but we really don't believe in it. No, we believe that this is truly Jesus's body and blood, soul and divinity here in his body and in his blood, in the Eucharist and in the blood here in the cup, in the chalice. And he said, and this is happening every hour on the hour across the entire world, across the whole globe. There's masses being said. Jesus is coming from heaven to earth, and people are able to experience him. And I said, oh, I guess I never realized that. I just always kind of figured some symbol, just not that serious. And so I really took that, and I was digesting that more and more, and materializing it in my heart. And it took me to go into my house, my room, and I take this crucifix off the wall, keeping all of that in mind, that Jesus has sacrificed himself to come meet me where I am in my darkest, deepest points in my life. And I'm taking a strong look at this, crucifix in my room, and I'm like, how is it possible for this Jesus God man to die for me to have life? Even though I don't understand it, I've never heard anyone refute it. And so I said, well, this must be true. If Jesus died to give me a chance at life, I might as well give him the first chance at my life to see what it is that he wants me to do. Because Father Scott would always say, if you do God's will, you'll be most happy. And so I said, well, okay, I don't want to lose my scholarship. I don't want to not, play football. But if this is something that God is inviting me into right now, who am I to say no to this? Because Abraham wanted to. So
let's pause right there.
Yeah.
My guest is Santonio Hill. He is he works for Focus, and he is also a Catholic evangelist. And we're continuing on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm talking with Santonio Hill. Santonio works for Focus and the Catholic Missionary Organization, and he is also a speaker and evangelist, a man whose heart is on fire for bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ to those who need it for the sake of conversion. So you were talking earlier about how, especially towards the discernment of college, God starts wrestling with your heart. And so he does in your heart what he does with Jacob becoming Israel and calling Abraham out, like you mentioned. Let's pick up from there. So what happens?
Yeah, so I was thinking, and I guess this is maybe one of my first real honest, vulnerable prayers. God called Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. And Abraham had wanted a child for 100 years. And, this is the one thing that, he was been praying for, and God was finally, it was able to take place and happen. And now God's saying, Abraham, I need you to sacrifice your son. And without skipping a beat, Abraham said, okay, Isaac, let's go on a hike. And to think, okay, he truly values his son, obviously, but he values God even higher. Mm-hmm. And so to put God in front of family, to me, to hear that, it made me think, well, I value my family really high, but do I value football higher than my family? Do I value all these things higher than God at the end of the day? And I did, 100%. But that was an opportunity to realize, okay, if Abraham is able to sacrifice his son, which at the end of the story, sorry for all the people who haven't read the Bible in this portion yet, the spoiler, he didn't end up killing his son because, God allowed another sacrifice to come about in the bush, in the ram. And I ended up obviously having to sacrifice football for seminary at that moment, but I was willing to do it because I wanted to be most happy. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to follow God's will. I think at that point, if God said, I want you to eat that chair, I would probably figure out a way to break it down and digest it because I just really, you
get a lot of fiber.
And I really do think that, like, for me, it kind of came from a place of my earthly father never chose me. Mm-hmm. And here's God the Father saying, I am choosing you. I want you to know who I am, and I want you to be formed by me. And so I think in the back of my mind, knowing that God the Father was choosing me, I think I was all in because of that. And I decided to go forward with it. And I joined seminary. I was in for 4 years. I was able to learn how to pray, how to be a virtuous man, or at least, not always putting it into practice, but I understand it now, at least at the very least. And it completely shifted the trajectory of my life. I think that if I didn't go to seminary, I think I would have ended up more or less kind of like my father. But now, I have the ability to be more like my earthly father because of that experience that I had in seminary.
So you've now learned that the value of manhood, masculinity, is primarily found in Jesus Christ. You are learning to walk that path. There's a structure there, and that's a structure of virtue. That's what it means to be a man. What does that do now for the way you think about your life? You're married. You have a child.
I have 3 kids.
Three kids.
2 boys.
2 boys and 1 girl?
Yeah.
And so you're fathering them in the way that God has fathered you. Mm-hmm. What you didn't receive before, you're trying to give forward. Tell us about that.
Man, in some ways it brings tears to my eyes because I'll sit and I'll like put my kids to sleep at night. I'll sing songs to them. I read them a book. And it's like, man, my father didn't do this for me. And I have the ability to do this for my kids right now. And it's beautiful and it's awesome. And so the way that I try to instill, good, and my oldest child is 3. So, it's not much real conversation that we can have quite yet. He's not at the age of reason. But I try to do little things around the house that kind of give the examples of what does masculinity look like? How do you be a good man and a good father and a good husband? And so things like making my wife a coffee. I don't even drink coffee. Actually, I hate coffee. I think it's terrible. Sorry for all the bean water lovers out there. I'm sure I'm, creating some hate there. But
I just felt a disturbance in the forces. You said that.
But I'll make my wife a coffee. She loves cappuccinos, and so I figured out how to, froth the milk and do the little hearts and all these things to give to my wife. And my son said, "Daddy, I want to do this. I want to do this for mommy." And I'm like, "Well, when you get a little older, you can help me with that." But for him to want to start emulating this small act of service and love, it's massive because I grew up thinking, well, I'll just get whatever comes to me. I get whatever I want. It was a very relativistic household, I would say, I grew up in. And so to understand service in this way at a young age, to have it be instilled, and to know that, like, yeah, real love is not what I can get from a situation or from a person. It's what I can offer someone else, and that sacrifice. And so Andre, even though he might want to do that, and then the very next moment he might also want to punch Kristen, in the leg or something like that.
Yes.
I'd like, mommy, I love you, bam. And it's like, well, all right, let's work on that love. Let's try to tie it in a little bit more. But also, moments for, like, on Holy Thursday, I'm washing my kids' feet and I'm praying over them. I pray with them, obviously at the dinner table and at night before we go to sleep at night and everything like that as well. But to bless them as the king of my household, of my own domestic church, and to lead in these ways. Try to pray the rosary as a family, which is not easy when you have 3 under 4, and kids are just like doing all kind of things. My daughter, she wants to just play dress up and put on makeup, and it's like, baby girl, you just do that. We'll keep praying. But it's right now it's more leading by example and praying with these kids, these young boys, and also trying to instill, hey, we are men, we protect,
Yes.
we don't hit our sister, we protect our sister. And
Your strength is for service and protection.
yes. And these are some of the ways that I try to instill in him. And I know he can only understand things really in 3-word sentences. And so we protect, and it's enough. And he's like, okay, daddy. And so, yeah, little ways like that.
I find that not only truly beautiful, as one who had similar family struggles as you, because like I mentioned, the black struggles in the U.S. is the black struggles across the world. And I think people don't realize that the solution to all of that is Jesus Christ, is the teachings of the church, is the doctrine of marriage and the family that the church has handed down in terms of covenant, but also sacrament. So you now, in living out God's model for your manhood, first of all, your sonship, and then your manhood, and then from there, your husbandhood, your fatherhood, and then your work in ministry. There are many people listening right now who share similar wounds. You and I have similarities, but there are some specific things that you've gone through that some people listening right now might relate to. In about a minute, what can you share with them to drive them back to the embrace of Christ?
We're not a combination of things that we've done wrong in our life. Or things that we've been victimed to in our life. When I was at my lowest point during COVID, which I feel like is a typical story as well, I started falling back into pornography hard. And I think it was because I was searching once again. For whatever reason, I said, God's kind of out of the picture right now. And I wish I had my dad around. And I knew that the thing, like, my father introduced me to pornography. And so I think I wanted to feel close to him. So I started going back into this vice, unfortunately. Ended up getting out of that by the grace of God, by going to adoration. There was this one church that would stay open and have adoration and confession. And I was reading this book, Be Healed. And within this book, they talk about...
Dr. Bob Schuch.
By Dr. Bob Schuch, yes. And within this book, he talks about the scripture of Jesus Christ being baptized. And leading up to this baptism, he had done not a thing. He ran away from his parents for 3 days, and he got found by them at the age of 12. And so we see a little mischievousness, seemingly. There's more to that story for sure, but there's nothing a breakout, of Jesus's character or his ministry during this, right before leading up, and he gets baptized, and then what happens? A dove flies over, the skies open up, you hear this audible voice, and it's God the Father saying, "This is my son, my beloved son, with whom I'm well pleased." And allowing that to permeate through my heart and my soul and my mind, and to wrestle with that and just sit in that more and more, return to confession and return to the Father. Man, I don't think there's anything else that I could say. That is the key that I try to constantly go back to and live out of my sonship and being a child of God first, as a title over father, over husband, over the guy who does ministry, whatever. Child of God first, everything else flows.
My guest has been Santonio Hill. He works for Focus, the missionary organization, and he's also, by virtue of that, a Catholic evangelist. And we've been talking about his life in Christ. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.